Hello everyone, autumn special today, a chance to talk a bit about the channel. You know that I used to, in the early days, make a video every 100, and later I decided to say, well, it's roughly 90 as well, so let's make it seasonal, right? This is one of the few chances that I have to speak out loud about how the channel is doing behind the scenes, hence the backstage title, to relax a little bit in general from the pace. It's not really a big deal, but in the past, I was much more analytical regarding the channel's trends, stats, etc. The point is that the channel has been continuously growing, historically so, this is true, but the acceleration has been deeply felt increasing in the last month or so. And so I used to say, well, every year is really kind of a new channel, right? It almost regenerates itself. Now I look at the summer special and realize, we're pretty long way from that already. This year we witnessed some modest technical improvement regarding audio, video. It's never been a big deal. You know, the philosophy of this channel, essentially, if you are sort of perceptive enough to realize that what we discuss is important, regardless of how I personally do it, because I think to be fairly intelligible at this point. And of course, I can claim that we do much more than most people really do in terms of average sort of analysis of the treated topics. You have, in any case, also realized that there's been an important improvement just in the topics, choosing the scripts, in really an important variety of genre. We haven't really surpassed the usual topic chooser, the famous cycle slash lottery that remains actually a necessary mean. I can't say, I don't know, maybe in 1 year from now we will have completely surpassed that, but it's not the case in the sense that there are always very interesting topics that wouldn't talk about anyway. In the last couple of months, we probably noticed, especially the biography series, we talk a bit more about strategy campaigns, particular wars, also other topics in general, where you'll see what's coming as well. It's become ever easier, as always, since the beginning, increasingly, to make videos. For me, I have much more time, not much for them, but also for other things that I didn't have in between this and my profession. Things having sort of stepped up also in that field. As a matter of fact, probably some of you will start really knowing me soon, even though I won't say who I am, of what I'm publishing. This year, for example, I published also as under pseudonym, under Schwerpunkt, for that Italian military history journal that literally asked me to do so. I hadn't contacted them, and that was really interesting because it sort of pieces together with all the rest that we've seen in the recent years, etc. We should point out that actually this year, 2025, for YouTubers was not a great one for a couple of reasons. Probably some of you has heard of this. From one side, in March, they introduced a new algorithm that basically continues to push towards sort of the cheaper, dumber content. That wasn't much of a big deal. The biggest deal apparently was from August, that I also experienced, especially in September, namely the ads issue, meaning that views dropped. Apparently that was in PC, desktop, probably views. I didn't experience that. I experienced a radical drop in views, but it turns out that the views are actually counted. I mean, they're not counted, but they're received in some way. In fact, apparently the income remains stable, even if you have less views. The only thing is that does really affect the stats overall of the channel, because if the views are not registered, also the videos are less watched. This, however, happened basically for everyone, and in general for basically the regular mix of proportion of desktop views that people regularly get. This was a pity because considering what had happened last year for the channel, namely that in September we literally boomed and we started to get organic views in, 25, 4,000 a day at some point. It's something insane, never seen before. I said, well, this year is going to be even bigger. And instead, the thing hit exactly at that point. It's, by the way, weird. this thing of dropping desktop views did not happen to me. I'm always very skeptic regarding the veridicity also of what the YouTuber community studies this thing says. But I mean, in that sense, it was pretty convincing, but things did not happen the same way for me. I'm also a smaller channel, so maybe who knows what sort of the broader effect also between a channel and another because of that is the case. Also, there is this idea in September, October, kids go back to school, and so there should be less views, something like that. I actually always experience much higher views at that point. And admittedly, later in December, January, and so on. So let's see what we can do. We have apparently remounted as far as this was concerned, and the stats are somehow pretty durable, pretty stable. Basically, we have this year stepped up a little bit again in odd ways because income has actually increased. The overall views have been spiking towards higher levels, never as high as last year, but we have sort of been surpassing the plateau. We've been moving more easily above the 4,000 views in 48 hours. That is sort of like now where we should be on a regular basis. It's easier to hit 5,000, all this kind of stuff. This is all sort of a technical profiling that is probably uninteresting for you. I mean, now what can we say, however, about the channel as a whole? Because at this point, it stops being about technique, etc. It starts projecting Schwerpunkt into an unprecedented dimension, namely the fact that I have started being a bit more visible, right? Last year, I mean, throughout all the history of Schwerpunkt, I received proposals, jobs, literally, I mean, small job. I also worked like I had a booklet reviewed, and they had really to throw money away from the thing. I was asked by television back in the day, like for an old video on the Mamluks, to be interviewed. Last year I made that, and now it's starting to come to YouTube itself, right? I am not really known among the sort of the YouTube. I mean, YouTube-wise, I'm still again a small channel. There's no doubt about this. But within the historical community, somebody has started properly knowing me. Right, I'm likely going to make soon a cooperation. I don't want to spoiler anything, but I was asked by a channel that is basically same size in mine and that is also fairly famous for some reason, because essentially they made less videos but more punching. And so for some reason you're more popular like that, even though you have the same amount of subscribers for some reason. I don't really understand how, in this sense, known I am outside of this, because it's not much like I live in the bubble. I actually check whether people search for me, all this kind of stuff. Last year we had an interview with Veritas and Caritas. This year we have this other thing. There was something else incoming, I don't remember, but again, we have seen the fact that as a channel I'm more visible, more people comment me and ask me stuff for cooperation, whatever. I've never been big about that, but let's say I'm not a very sociable person, as you probably realize, and not even in the conventional sense of being not being sociable, but in the sense, in fact, I'm quite not really competitive. If somebody says, okay, let's do this, I'm on board with that. Even though I would avoid that by nature, the more chthonic side, it says, oh my God, I'm lazy, I don't want to do this. But at the end, because I have like my schedule is really full by itself, but I understand the importance of these occasions to be more and better known. This has come also for different reasons. First of all, let's go by order. Now, as we will arrive to 30,000 and make again the bigger thank and everything, we'll see that we'll have to talk a bit more about where the channel is going in broader terms, like in terms of meaning, because this is what it boils down to. I've gotten more views this year, especially because I started talking, for example, about Indo-European theology. I should open a big parenthesis, but probably I'm going just to comment that later. The point is that I've always experienced on this channel since the very first years, that in this terrain playlist you find most of these kind of discussions about the channel. The sense that the most watched videos were always something to do with ethnic stuff, with what people would consider as more how do you say, like causing havoc or interest, the more controversial stuff. What's this guy's ideology? Like there was that phase for a couple of years ago regarding also Reddit that for some reason stopped discussing me regarding my work, whatever. And I actually noticed something very interesting. I'm primarily a military historian, so I don't never hidden that. I've never really tried to make this channel something that it wasn't. Obviously, I do have unitly not just a personal inclination towards history, towards spirituality and more, for reasons that I can't quite immediately discuss, especially today. And I've greatly expanded in that area. But in general, like, this channel is truly based on Clausewitzian theory. I arrived to certain religious stuff through that, believe it or not, and it's all documented on the channel for that matter. But I will have to keep talking about this former aspect specifically. In fact, with all these new specials, etc., I plan to resume Clausewitzian theory. We have to finish the Funkrieg for sure. Many of you ask me to do, I mean, not so many, but people who apparently like start following me, and I have the first introduction to the series everybody watches, then you realize down the line nobody watches the rest. This is really typical. But somehow people are interested, and they would like still to say, why don't you continue that? It's been now years. I abandoned that in 2021 for different reasons that were moral and technical alike. There's all a history of the channel. Now it's a long time ago, but personal and, again, so probably YouTube issues that brought me to rethink, to reorganize, and to do all this kind of stuff. Today, we can say we have achieved a level of, again, solidity. I would use this term that was really unprecedented. We are in a condition. Life always goes on in unpredictable ways, and so there are always ups and downs. It always, at some point, seems as if things were going bad, then suddenly they go well, and this is, in many ways, also what we discuss when we talk about history of religions and more, and so on. The reason why this concerns us, I mean, at some point I've gotten over the fact of people listen to me only when I talk about religious stuff, because essentially it's controversial, or they hope that's the key to my quote-unquote ideology, and they want to know what's this all about. I'm happy to explain things. If you look at my question and answer series, there's also other stuff incoming that's useful, and obviously select the questions that seem to be more expandable in that way. There are people who haven't answered to in years, and that I should actually catch up with, because reasons. The interesting aspect of this, though, is that, and this has been the trend, especially in the right, I've definitely fallen into this box in a way or another. So there's a lot of things have been going on. This channel never quite openly talks about specific political things, and I don't plan at all to do so, because I think the channel saved itself, maybe got less views. I mean, it would be really easy for me to talk about this or that, right? The sort of what people liked the most at this point was watching my videos about the Russian invasion of Ukraine, this other Indo-European stuff, because in their opinion, this is where you can essentially get the political compass of the creator and all this stuff. The problem, though, is that the work that we have been doing, or the question, I think, is very interesting. We've been making lots of videos, especially about Indo-European theology. And I have met on occasion with some resistance, not from the audience. There's all that matter of, but Schwerpunkt does not allow comments. This has been my policy since the very beginning. I've always been very clear, open, explicit about this. I can't tell you, I do not get basically any criticism, but the kind of criticism that I perceive that is much less explicit than in the past years, it's mostly like my own sort of sensitivity to this criticism itself, that in fact tries to mask itself. It's always more connected with sort of very like currently debated topics, especially in American politics. I think you know what we're talking about. I've referenced to them here and there, especially in the question and answer videos. And that will essentially place us as a channel somewhere, which I think has always been the strong point of this channel, meaning not the fact that we weren't aligned or that we didn't have a clear position, but the fact that we would have a position not because of not chasing somebody else's ideology, but essentially creating our own on the basis of historical evidence, right? Which is essentially what all the videos about tradition are get down to. Why are we doing that? Right? You've probably noticed that every week in the weekend, because there you get more views as well, and so that's our punching line, sort of our spearhead. I make those videos about tradition, about Indo-Europeistics, about, now we started also something about the Hermetic tradition. There is really a lot of stuff that we have just begun to cover. And the channel will increasingly be about this, as a matter of fact. So this part of the year is actually pretty tough. Autumn used to be, for most of my life, my favorite season. But for some reason, it feels like you always wait for this time that is magic and cool and whatever. And at some point, you always feel tired in autumn. It may be the cortisol peak, or hormones, bringing you up more under stress, whatever. You tend to work more. You tend to say, "Oh, whew, I made this far," and it's good. It's great. You feel it. You're also not as young as you used to be, and so this is also a time. For example, I didn't say this throughout the channel, but I moved. I moved only 300 meters from where I lived, and I'm pretty close to anyone I have to be. But let's say this is a new time in my life, and making these videos this year has been very, very new for me, very experimental, again, it's been freer. There is some component of Schwerpunkt nowadays that comes from a much straighter, sort of more straightly original place that it's not like I couldn't be before, but let's say I've been sort of mentally liberated by lots of things. Certain things happen to me that, I don't know, I feel like, again, life takes very strange turns on a regular basis. I can't stress enough how lucky I am to begin with in my life, and I'm incredibly grateful for everything that I can do. But I know that everything could stop from a moment to another. It doesn't even have to be sort of the most dramatic things imaginable, but life. I managed to make YouTube something interesting, almost institutional in my life next to what I do for a living, but you never really know. I'm at a peak moment also in my early academic career where I should take a next step, and everything is really difficult. And that's also why I always have this hope that the channel can somehow serve as, if not a launching pad for anything, because I don't really chase notoriety, especially as a person. I don't really care about being out there in the discourse as my persona. That's why I've never filmed myself. I'm confident with that, etc. But let's say, aside from the fact that the mystery apparently generates some extra attention, there is still, however, some important element to the reason which I still separate this, the two things. Like this summer, I wrote to Jordan Peterson, by the way, that I find myself incredibly sort of ever more critical to, but that I could, in this sense, I don't know, integrate in some ways that I thought I could. Even talk to him. I asked him, and all of a sudden, so maybe my curse, he, as you know, disappeared from the scene because of some relatively, apparently, serious health issues and whatever. So there are some potential spikes that you can't really predict in life. Which turn, like maybe one video one day that becomes viral for no reason, as it happened, say, never gone viral, but say there are some videos, as I said before, that are inexplicably more watched than others. That's actually, there is this other more likely scenario that is one of the bigger channels starts making some video response or criticism of Schwerpunkt, and so at that point we will gain ever more traction. And I noticed this strange phenomenon, namely the fact that for the my stats are very weird. All right, now we will also talk about this. Essentially, I made lots of videos with few views overall, and not even because these are particularly bad videos. Sometimes I watch other channels' videos with a few time that I had disposal for that, or at least just because I'm curious, which I normally don't do, right? But I really want to see, in a strategic sense, what choices there are, and I say, but this video, even just in factual terms, it's not like I make worse stuff than others, right? So I don't really understand to an extent why at least some videos of mine haven't reached a broader audience, but it's also apparently happening. And my impression, and I wouldn't like to, or maybe I would like to be wrong about this after all, or actually, wait, I wouldn't like to be wrong for real about this, is that there is not much some sort of gatekeeping that's a narrow minority, and sort of vocal minority apparently of the channel has always been by saying things like, it's better that you don't get followed by more people because why? Do you think they're going to change my content accordingly? That's not going to happen. I'm sort of very stubborn, and I tend to really remain on a specific track and just improving that. So that's my plan in a broader strategic sense. Rather the fact that people seem intimidated by my content, and I wouldn't like to be, I don't say this because of arrogance. I know that, of course, there is always some strange dynamic that we're all very critical of one another on YouTube, but then when we talk to one another, we're actually polite, etc. This is completely normal. This is also partly what happens normally on the internet. You don't see faces, you don't know people, you tend to make sort of pretty easy assumptions, etc. But the point is just, imagine that I made some video responses to some bigger channels. They surely acknowledged me because I'm discovering step after step that there is actually lots of them that watch me. Not maybe regularly, again, maybe like I watch them. But imagine this, like if you're habituated to make 20, not even slop videos, but say the famous 20 minutes gold proportion, let's say, of videos online for treating topics of the ones that I, for example, treat in 2 hours, right? Obviously, you're going to feel intimidated because you're saying this guy does not play the game. This guy is following a completely different, let's say, trend where he doesn't seem to care even about how others receive his work, and he just goes on, and therefore if I make a response or criticism, he's going to make a 2 hours long video, and I don't have all the time to listen to what he said about me, and that is possibly the single most intimidating thing that I can think of. And that's why I've noticed online that there are ever less people sort of criticizing me in general, because over time I've been covering so much stuff, right? Even of those that they claim that I didn't know things, or that I didn't cite or whatever, that it's become evident by now that I am playing that freaking game, that I am sort of much more austic than I mean. Naturally, the more I go on, the more I even understand what kind of, it's a paradox. You understand how, say, what your weak points may be, and by acknowledging that, you sort of expand further on their own. So what was previously your weak weak point, at least now may become actually the strongest because you thought about that. And the point is that obviously over the years, I've done something that nobody has ever done. I challenge you to find anyone who does what I do. Right? Making lots of videos is something, but making lots of videos all focus on a specific topic every day in a serious fashion, with videos like this, for example, in which I just speak my mind out loud, are very rare, and even what I say in this is the consequence, in fact, of all the stuff that I make, that I learn every day. Do you realize how much I learned myself through this stuff? Imagine make almost every day for several years videos like this with new topics and coming back on the same multiple times. This confers you really something that, yeah, it's difficult not to sort of blow your own horn in this sense, but it's really something that helped me dramatically, clamorously in my life, in my work, and it's possible that, I mean, it's different and not substitutable, but say in terms of absolute amount of information, it's obvious that I digest much more through Schwerpunkt than through my doctorate, for example. So obviously I keep working in history every day, and so I learn from that side as well, and that equally informs Schwerpunkt. So this is what fascinates me with this whole thing, that it's not merely a political commentary. There are some there are famous YouTubers that started as pseudo historical commentarists of some sort, and essentially simply derail into open political discourse, and people celebrate them because they are on their team. I've never really cared about this. I obviously have explicit political opinions, and I'm very open about them, but at the same time, this is perhaps why people haven't really even maybe followed me so much, is that I don't give them satisfaction on that other front. It may be even a negative thing, at least I don't think it is negative, because I still firmly believe that without the history, you can't understand the rest. There isn't a shortcoming where you, you listen to just one video and you become knowledgeable about the wall, or you listen to that. It used to be boomers who wanted simply, from a political point of view, wanted to be validated for their own ideas, right, and not having practically anything to do with the rest, not wanting to hear anything else that didn't simply ring right with them in that sense. And it seems there's been a mass epidemic, especially after COVID, the war in Ukraine, etc., that has simply, it's not even polarization, because you understand how different certain ideas can be, but how sort of many different niches that have shot their everything to any other position have established themselves to the point of complete distraction and alienation from reality. There are some ideas today that even 5 years ago, if somebody had said out loud, would have been completely ostracized. And I'm talking, specifically from a right-wing perspective, and not because of what, say, leftist silencing would have been. I'm talking within the right itself. And this is extremely interesting. Nobody seems to be talking so much about this, because it's like, again, it's like the channel. It's something increasingly accelerating. And for all the things that were written in the past, that we all, this political perspective, this author wrote, at this point, it's all temper in terms of political change. And nobody is actually studying any of this, right? It seems like this is one of the most, maybe not most important times in history, or maybe yes, but even so, like, exactly because there is no real perspective or acknowledgement, everything seems to be fluidifying and collapsing in many terms. There doesn't seem to be any particular attention or care or interest in all this stuff. So it's again very, very interesting to witness to that, especially from YouTube. As a YouTuber, I can tell you're not really missing anything. I remember when I started Schwerpunkt, I always say this for some reason. I was the true reason was, yes, in theory, I don't know, making money online in some ways. And as you know, for years, I didn't even monetize, because I didn't believe that was strategically at that point something. Well, I was obliged by YouTube to monetize my own content. Otherwise, they were auto-monetized itself. But my first concern was, like, my greatest curiosity to an extent, how is it to run a YouTube channel? And again, it's nothing special, really. It's that boring. It's basically, it's your work that really pulls the cart. It's not much the algorithm. It's really, it is also that, but it's really that there is some overall driving factor that really gets down, especially if you really want to rise through the ranks, to how hard you work in that sense, and not much how, let's say, an algorithm magically makes you famous or something like that. There isn't any of it. I personally think to have earned, in that sense, the level of the amount of subscribers that I have and everything, I always thank you implicitly. I don't think I have to thank you all the time, because that's not because it sounds servile or anything. I mean, it would be just nice to do so. But the question, what I think, that I appreciate your support and everything. But at the same time, we should be both concentrated on something sort of more important at a general level, right? So my idea, as always, is that the channel at some point will actually explode, simply because, again, one guy replying to me from a bigger channel, and imagine all the videos that I made suddenly activating and whatever. I still, for example, there are some bigger channels. I found somebody in their comments who said, "Oh, I never heard of your channel. I'm so glad I stumbled upon channels with millions of subscribers." That were these people up to this point? Well, nobody really knows. But that's also the weird aspect of YouTube. That is a almost 30,000 subscribers channel. Obviously, I can't and won't get that sort of kind of rapid rise unless, especially by sticking to what I'm doing. But I don't complain. I can't complain, and I'm really happy where I am, where I stand. Other strange phenomenon that, however, is, I think, very actual and very obviously connected with things that are going on. In proportion, we will see it now, the amount of American viewers has increased. It's always been the highest, as you know, in proportion to the others. It always was within the range of, so let's set on the last 90 days, so we get thorough with this in the stats. All right, so let's take a look at it. Select by region. So here we are. Americans crush it, right? They constitute, by visualization time, here, see, watch time, 41.7%. It is true, and the average watch length is actually slightly superior to the overall average, right, of all the rest of the world. It's 14 minutes 16 seconds, which is not bad, definitely. And it's not like even we make very long videos, but it seems that this average watch length has increased over time. It was something like 11 back in the day, etc. So it's 12. It's barely higher as a whole. But for Americans that are many, it's completely normal when you have the bigger numbers to see sort of a shallower average, right? For example, United Kingdom is second in watch length, but it's overall 10 minutes 47. So it seems that Americans are particularly interested in what I'm saying, right? And I think this is very positive. Then Germany follows. Here, it's just in percentage. Americans, in terms of watch length, make up 41.7%. The United Kingdom is the second, 5%. So basically, any nationality is slower than that. So we get Germany, 43% and 12 minutes 29. Canada, 3.4%, 10 minutes 44. Well, okay, the rest is not so important, but say the Netherlands, Australia, Italy, Poland, Sweden, Serbia, France, Belgium, Romania, Brazil, Finland, Chile, Spain, Norway, Ireland, Czechia, India, Croatia, Ukraine, Austria, Greece, Portugal, Japan, Turkey, Denmark, Hungary, Argentina, Slovakia, Mexico, South Africa, Bulgaria, Philippines, New Zealand, Peru, Cuba, Switzerland, Taiwan, and so on. Right, and here we get basically to say who watches the most. The highest watch length is Iceland. We have 13 views in 3 months from Iceland. So this is completely normal. All right, normally the smaller numbers are really mostly connected. I have the highest engagements come from Czechia and Ukraine in this sense. They are respectively 23 and 21 minutes, and they are in the hundreds of views. So that means very dedicated watchers, and that's something I really am touched by, especially from Ukraine. It's something I can't deny being particularly sort of meaningful. And so again, it's a bunch of countries: Slovenia, Switzerland, Moldavia, Albania. Albania has a very high, well, it's only 10 views. Finland does not do bad. It's always been much in the forefront, over 1,000 views. and 19 minutes 25. Lithuania, okay, it's just 12. Serbia also does pretty well. Belgium, Norway, and again, United States. United States is probably the most glamorous of all. It seems I managed to fidelize many of you, and I'm very glad for that, because it's, I mean, to an extent, I am, let's say, I'm not an American wired channel as a whole, but first of all, my English is mostly American. There may be, if I make some British history video, I tend to speak a bit more their way. I can say I come even from some of the most Americanized countries in Europe, but it's obviously I follow a lot of American political commentaries. In particular, I love this sort of long format discussions, etc. So probably I got a lot from the United States. In any case, I learned to speak English in a almost decent way in school from an American teacher, an American, my own nationality, added teacher as well. And because she was born here, but she went over to the United States, and when she spoke in the lessons, I absorbed mostly that. There were some British English speakers also in my class that were very welcome. They enriched me a bit, but I feel that I resonate mostly with an American audience for some reason. I can't really look at any other significant stats. Usually because YouTube really tells you almost everything, and if you start making calculations, etc., you can find out pretty interesting things, but I don't have the time for that. I never had. We can check traffic source, which is particularly, this is actually important because it shows you where this information, all this watch length in particular, comes from. And say navigational functions, I never really fully understood what this was, but it's the most obvious way people actually learn about the channel from the home page, the greatest amount of views, subscriptions, watch later, chronology, and watch playlists as well. The interesting thing about this that I used to check, even though it was always sort of minority, it's really being the case, is how much comes from the YouTube recommendations. We are 40.4. I don't remember in the past how much it was to say, but it's the second and voice. It may have, and it has risen in the past, because the second one I remember distinctly was YouTube search, or even the first one was YouTube search, something like that. I don't remember really. This has fallen to 9%. It's kind of obvious. I can't see the trend, and with the past years I should check that out. But let's say the playlists have surpassed as well the overall, and so more and more people are tuning in a sense with the channel. External, we have in 3 months 3,000 views, and it's mostly from this is interesting. Google search obviously dominates, right? But we also have search, Brave.com, Google, WhatsApp, Yandex, Facebook, Discord. I know there is a community following me from other platforms, but I see the views are actually really scanning. All right. The interesting thing that, however, I wanted to sort of elucidate you about is that I created a playlist. So a bit weighted to say this. No, I created, of course, playlists are so important. There are so many, more than ever existed. So I'm glad to see that you tend to search in them, like sort of learned how it works. But I created a site. I created it last year, but Google apparently indexed it only this year, and it doesn't seem like I get, because I don't have the domain. It's a Google site, so basically works in a very automated fashion. But the important thing is that Google indexed it, and basically through artificial intelligence, and obviously I supervise that, I'm making a brief summary, this brief description, it's 270 words, from my own scripts to show you essentially what I say in the video as a little teaser, like say I talk about this, and it's sort of packed with information, and the objective is to increase let's check if there is, in fact, from not, because that's YouTube search, not Google search. Okay, well, that's not important now then. But it seemingly should boost, at least that's the actual purpose, should boost views, right? Because this is actually a place where you can find basically all the videos that I've made with a minimal description, and there is a search function whereby if you're interested in a very specific topic, you can literally see that if it figures in these descriptions every single instance I talk about something, and it can really be useful for everybody involved and boost the amount of views. It's a very primitive, archaic site. I'm not very interested, telling the truth, in this in technology at large. And I just trying to find lazy shortcuts to greater views, but it should in theory work. And I think if more people watch this site, it's going to be much easier for everybody, and I'm confident that this will really help the channel go on. So you see, over the years I've been slowly but constantly increasing, improving. There has always been some kind of interest in so many different aspects, avenues to promote the channel, etc. So it's really interesting from my perspective, because it's just like throwing an extra thing into the game and see how it works at the end of the day. And so this is what I'm going by currently. Regarding what I was saying before, again, I don't know. Let's just wait and see what happens. I know that I was profiling before the disobedience, but there are some people who essentially are more interested in my work ideologically, because they start recognizing that there is some pretty solid, basis for something that they probably never heard in their entire life. And so I can't say an alternative, but definitely a view on certain things that nobody currently presents, right? It's sort of weird, again, to see how many conservatives and alleged free thinkers, they're joining the ranks of, certain groups that really provide with incredibly shallow, unsophisticated perspective. I must say that I am creating an antidote for myself in the moment in which I, again, make independent videos just for the sake of history, that keeps me properly vaccinated, gives me antibodies to this other stuff. Like, I see history and life and more through my work, my historical work. It's always been the case. If you wonder again where I get my quote-unquote ideology from, this is straight from what we talk about. It's not something I randomly come up with without any kind of connection or sense or whatever. This is straightly like, okay, I studied this, I saw how it worked, and I may not, again, be an expert in everything I discuss, but across the board, definitely my perspective is one of the largest and probably deepest at this point. And therefore, I think that people are starting to realize the potential it lays also for them in this interpretation. It may be boring and difficult to listen to me at Similia, but at the same time, it's also probably one of the few ways that you really have to look at a different perspective without me necessarily falling in the trail of others that are doing pretty strange things nowadays. I don't think I can really expand on this too much. I'm thinking, how do I even make the 30,000 videos? 30,000 videos. Like, we're getting there. Subscribers. Excuse me. Today I was really exhausted for many reasons. So that's why I normally choose these days to make this kind of videos, because I don't have to think. It's not like, I'm properly making a historical analysis and criticism. This is mostly stating the obvious, but also from a subjective perspective that you may not exactly see and otherwise, right? Fortunately, I must say this, the interest towards my persona has decreased, right? In the past, there were more people asking where I came from or whatever. And it's always funny to see how people online search for everything. Like they dissect my dialect. They try to pinpoint a certain nationality study. They research everything I've said. It's very interesting, and I love to see that. But at the same time, it seems to me that finally we have started heading towards a more sort of coherently compact perspective on the really the what matters in the channel for the channel, right? So not as an excuse and or a something that distracts you from other direction. I understand that some of you is particularly curious anyway, and you ask questions and you try to find out so on. But at the same time, the channel itself is more important. What we're doing here is more important. Looking at this never done, we could use it to lengthen a bit the video. Because really, I don't even know what to say in this videos, because the stats are somehow boring. And actually, we could come back briefly on the stats, because I wanted to see on longer time, so since the very beginning of the channel, 2018, seeing especially the traffic sources, because there are some long-term dynamics that really reveal probably way more than we normally think. Some navigational functions have surpassed, well, in 2021, the YouTube search. Just think, there was an age on YouTube in which the YouTube searches were you used to find me much more quickly. It was a mistake probably to, well, you know what happened in 2021. We had to re-upload a great part of the work. The channel was fine, but I really needed this. Let's watch, rather than views, the watch time as a whole, and let's see what's going on, because that's sort of more interesting. Okay, the navigational functions actually had started dominating earlier compared to the sheer views. We have been, so navigational functions took off really, especially from the last year, were not bad now either. So let's see it in comparison to YouTube search. YouTube search actually has not been that happy, especially this year. Everything has remained pretty stationary and lower than last year. We've seen that they are not so important anymore in the watch length. So as you've seen, the playlists actually surpassed this. And also, playlists actually had some gradual decline this year, but they have come back a bit more watched. There was a greater increase in 2023, etc. So it's strange how we have accumulated stuff. And recommended videos, apparently, in the last months, this last 3 months or even more, have spiked, have been higher than ever, interestingly enough. And this, I presume, is connected within the European theology series, even though I don't have here the way to connect the two things. Channel pages, not much. External, again, minimal, basically. And so this is also completely normal. So it's a weird trend. It's not really a particularly healthy trend, but that's why the more we are, the better everything really is. Looking at the videos that I've made in the last 30, again, my head is not functioning today, but here we touched the exact moment. This is a sign in which the next video started. So I have to insert, because you don't see that. I usually am doing I either stop, or I can tell you now, I'm putting the top fixed comment below the video. This is a cool video, by the way. You've seen it yesterday anyway, so I don't need to repeat myself. I don't know how many videos I'll get. You see, this is also a bit strange in the this damn it. The one of the strangest things about YouTube is that you make some videos that are objectively better than others, and nobody watches them, right? And that's the thing that honestly, it's worse than, I don't know, for example, when I see people unsubscribe at large, I'm happy, because also people largely unsubscribe when they see a video that they don't like, and I can immediately sense that because it happens only for specific videos. And so actually at that point I say better, because you see the feeling is creating a dedicated community. Like the broader point of this all is that the more we create consensus, the more consistent also the YouTube reliability can be. Obviously, if you have a diaspora of enemies that were former subscribers, you may get bad press and so on. But at the same time, you sort of radicalize the the positivity of the rest. And so on the community, and so the community looks better from the outside as well. This may sound like a non-thing, but say this is measured on the basis of the quality. Naturally, the greater the channel's quality, and the better this dynamic works, right? If you obviously get to sloppy channels, to ideological stuff, and really not what should be, it's going to be easier, obviously, to say, okay, well, only the imbeciles remain, and the others, the heroes that criticize you and whine because you blocked their. It's better if I don't. That's another chapter. What I get in the comments in terms not of criticism towards me, but things like, okay, we're all adults. We know what those kind of comments are saying. Like, look at the current political situation. You can't imagine, all right? And there's never been an actual tolerance towards that stuff. So fortunately, I see it, say, not necessarily a more pronounced way than before, but in a more normalized way. And that's the thing that bothers me the most. Like the fact that, say, it's not like I'm not confident regarding the fact that this channel can. I'm not here to change your mind, really. If I do, I'm happy if I do it for the better. But let's say I'm not interested per se in, I don't know, fixing you or whatever. What I'm interested in is doing something that makes me feel, say, like I've made really something positive, regardless of who is going to. Even if it's just one person, it's exactly what I wanted. Anyway, it would have been worth it, because there is an infinite potential in that regard. I don't know how I've gotten here, and what I was saying before this, I don't remember. Again, I'm focused, because in the meanwhile, I'm also saving the pictures that you're saying here, because I haven't prepared them for today, so I want to have them ready for tomorrow and other days, hopefully next year, if you're going to still be here. So you can't be sure regarding, for example, what I said, that unless I die or something terrible happens to me, or like I get paralyzed or whatever, or mute, or I can't read, or all stuff like that, like I lose my voice or something. I plan to continue this, and so it's all very, let's say, I have some sort of long-term approach and idea of this, of keeping to improve this, to make better content. Given the results that we have obtained this year, I think that by continuing the type of content we've been testing in the last couple of months is going really to help a lot for further rise. It's not like because I found again the way to top the algorithm or anything. Tendentially, there is a better way to market them with thumbnails, with certain particular aesthetics in particular, because people are like children if they look at pictures in particular. But it's also very about calibrating the content, right? Balancing all the, say, you can't make, for example, too close topics at a time, right? In similarity. You must be careful with the sequence even of the thumbnail. It's something extremely complicated to realize, however, people seem to be particularly sensitive to, one another. The important is to get other people to know. I will probably discuss this on another occasion. Again, I'm preparing myself for the other video on the 30,000, because there we will get a bit more, not ideological, at least ideological I use as a neutral term, but we will get to the point of literally saying, what do we want to turn this channel into, right? Because at this point, I've never really understood even how I'm perceived. There is such a scarce amount of reviews about Schwerpunkt and such a sort of contained criticism, and also general, like, people get this. They say just this guy's doing the actual deal, and let's keep him doing this, and that's also again what I'm mostly in line with. But I suspect at some point, if we get in the scale of, I don't know, 50,000, if you really get some some real, say, if we reach somewhere, people are going to actually follow us again, if you're going to also join the fray. Before I said the thing about Peterson, because the notion would be is that I really think that there is a massive chunk of tradition that he's missing, and ideally the fact would be not necessary to turn my life about, but let's say were I to ever speak with one of these people, it's obvious that my personal life would also change. I would have to go out there to show myself, to see who I am, and so it would be sort of a completely different thing from what I'm doing now. I'm still in the same identical sort of frame, at least in the way I make this videos, the way I started the channel, which is fantastic now, because now I get even some sort of minimal income from this, next to my others, and it feels like time well spent. You can't say, well, this is completely useless, you're doing it to no avail. You start having 30,000 subscribers. It's something that, relevant. It's something that starts having also form on its own. It feels like a point, a starting point rather than a point of arrival. Even so, it's auspicious, and I really wanted to do more for this channel so far. There is sometimes, like today, for example, sometimes you really are tired, like not because of the videos. You're tired. Actually, you're tired because you do so many things at once, and there are problems, even trivial ones, and all together you have to, it comes like you come to an evening like this and you realize that you're tired, and maybe you can't put all the energy in the video. You don't know exactly what you say, and or you ache while you're speaking because maybe you have an headache. Like this case, I had to take some tachypyrin, as a matter of fact, as a matter of fact, it's for other reasons. Was unwanted noises, tension, and whatever. My life is fine, but in something like in this enormously balanced system, if it goes a comma sort of astray, can cause you some minimal strain. And if you have especially a good night's sleep, which is frankly the thing that I I need the most, because I've become very, very, very regular, and especially with the right time. As you know, there was a time called the longest night that probably also helped very much the channel, because at that point it was really a mystical experience, and at some point I'm going to make a video about that, because some of you, like, it's not much of a personal video, because still I wouldn't tell you who I am, what I was doing, but, and I even explained this in one of my videos, but from the Serene series, that, as you know, is very much like the place where you get this kind of reflections on the channel over the years and so on. And needless to say, it changed a lot from then. That's also another thing you feel, really, the fact that time passes, and at some point you look back at yourself and say, but I would never feel comfortable to come back being who I was at that point, because I learned so much in the meanwhile. I went so far that really it doesn't really make much sense to presume even that you're the same person. Then you do look back and you look at some things that you said, well, but I still believed that at the time, I still do now. And eventually, maybe that's the most important thing after all. This thing that strikes you, like, is you're absorbed by not much notification, because you notice on Twitter I'm not even particularly active or whatever. I don't really use internet much. I use it just for very few things. Mostly, even when I work at the computer, it's say I'm not using the internet in a social sense, right? I'm either writing an article, I'm researching stuff in my sort of books that I have, my library, my art disk, and so on. And so I have few connections, meaningful people, and then those also, that is actually the most important thing for me. And even there, it's always a struggle. You don't, there are so many things that happen in the world, and everything is entwined with that. So it can be, it's intense, but it makes you grow, and so it's actually very educational, and it helped you growing. Right, that's the obvious realization, and I'm not really a boy anymore. Apparently, also your brain, it's not just like the mid-20s that make the difference, right? It's apparently, especially in our age of growth, so to say, which is literally retarded compared to the past. Like we man up really much later in a general sense. Here, while I'm talking to you, I saved like, I don't know, hundreds of pictures. You're probably seeing this is enormous. My God, tomorrow, in order to, it's very easy to mount these videos because I always talk straight without much interruption to edit or mistakes and so on. But the pictures, there are really many. Aside from this, however, I'm not an optimistic person, because I'm not a pessimistic person either, but I like to see what's going on. I like to think about this, what I can provide you with, what is also meaningful. Behind this, there is all the historical, like what kind of topics do we make? And we were watching, in fact, at the videos that are already made. If I look at my own page, the last 90 days, we probably made some of the most important videos in the entire channel's history, right? So departing a little bit from the cycle was objectively relevant to an extent. The video about Corleone, for example, has a beautiful thumbnail. May sound dumb, but it's also, I'm fairly satisfied by that with that video's content. But let's say in general, I can also appreciate these things. The video about the Black Watch, for example, some of you liked it so much, but at the end of the day, it's just because it's the Black Watch. I could have made a much better video. The Indo-European stuff, again, you will watch. Ukraine, that you'll watch. Even the Q&As are watched. The Civil War is what I mean. I make sure. Strangely enough, Charles III the Simple, King of Western Francia, didn't get even 500 views in 8 days. It's very strange. The other videos, not even the Bamberger writer, that I thought to be actually a very important topic. Medieval Ruthenian warfare, not so much. You watch the British strategy of 7 Years' War. You didn't watch that. Why didn't you like British history? You like Black Watch, but you don't like how the Brits conquered West Africa, the Caribbean, India. For the rest, other videos were fairly fine. Here I see in the previous days, some were, getting me lots of views, especially the ones about the Dorian migration. That was big. Made really lots of views considering the whole thing. Ever the rest of these weren't all bad. Like the Etruscans, that thing about the Pelasgian versus the Roman stuff was a thing. Medieval slumbering monarchs. This thing actually got heresy. 1,600 views. Not too bad. The Hungarian Revolution, you didn't watch too much. That the concept of order as consciousness in the Indo-European theology, that's very important. 3,200 views. The Scholar Gladiatoria video responses got lots of views back in October, September, even up to 3,000 views. So yeah, there are certain things that really matter more to you and they're kept being watched in ways that you want to really consider. And so, yeah, we stepped up considerably since September, where there was that apparently ads crisis due to YouTube weird, shady doings. And I see here, even this video is long enough because I kept talking and talking and talking. Perhaps today we'll go to sleep earlier. given the fact that I'm exhausted, but it's also important to discuss this autumn and the thing. And autumn, again, is magic. There's something I like to talk about seasons because there is really an existential and natural and thing. The reason why I love autumn is this impending tension, after all. I like it exactly for that reason, that the sun is emphatically cavalcading towards the abyss, and we're here witnessing to it. The weather changes, the landscape changes. It's all this new place where I live has beautiful sort of depth of view, pretty sort of tens of kilometers away even, and it's it's great to live where I live. I think. At least for me, because probably many of you, it's not like you wouldn't like to be here. Actually, many people would, but they wouldn't get exactly what I'm referring to when I'm saying this right now. And I don't know, but I long, however, for something else and something more. And this depth, this vision, whatever we think this whole thing is about, that we talk about as far as history, as religion, I think that it really can offer you the same range, the same reach, the same depth. Autumn, again, is almost like a culminating point, as it is, towards the winter solstice. And in the northern hemisphere, that much you know. Well, first you know that I live in Europe, for that matter. I could live in some, European colonies somewhere in the world. And only a few countries have those left. But in any case, de facto colonies, in fact. And overall, what can I say? This kind of video, strange. I know that there is a personal effect to this. Some of you tell me, but it's interesting what you said here because it tells more about yourself. As you know, I've never really talked about myself. This is not what the channel has ever been about, right? We have had ups and downs. We've seen pretty rough amount of stuff, and I want to thank you even before that video, which I will abundantly thank you in general, because I don't know. I don't think it's the vicinity of other people. I don't think it's exactly that. It's the fact that it's participating to this broader meaning, right? It's the things that we have been articulating, your patience. There is something I appreciate very much about you, like, because I wonder how can so many people, in my view, watch me? How can there be this constant flow of clicks of views? It's not too much. We haven't reached even 3 million views since the beginning. But they count, as we've seen. They're very, 3 million views for way more than 10 minutes average watch. It's not really irrelevant. It is really, there are lots of people by now that have known my work. Here I don't even look at the impressions because it's sort of a very different thing. I could actually, there are these other sections in the analytics. Content, we've seen it. What the hell? I could explore all these, but I don't know. I'm not really. 50 million impressions. That's not that bad. Public. This is important. You have. Wow. Really? What the hell is this? Never seen this metric. The daily. No, the monthly public. But it shows, however, numbers for a single day. So it's not entirely clear what this means, because I get here much higher numbers than the views I get every day, and I see, well, this is strange. Maybe it's based on an average, because it would say that we have monthly, but measured by days, something like, I don't know, at this point, 20,000 people being here again. We have, again, here sort of different metrics that I never trust, really, as far as YouTube is concerned. The metrics, we have only, this we know, YouTube is overwhelmingly male, right? We have less than 5% women. Here, I don't think it is views, not watch. Like, it could be actually greater. I don't know. We have mostly people between 25, 34 years old. This is interesting. We also have a substantial number of people above 45 altogether are more than people between 18 to 24. They are more or less the same number. Actually, no, way more. It's like something like double, interestingly enough. So we are a mature channel in many ways. This is interesting. But it's interesting, of course, to have a 1/5 of younger people. That is definitely fascinating, and YouTube doesn't quite track also even younger people, so surely we have a bit more of that. We here have different, the same. The regions, most of you watches me through the phone, really. 1/3 only through computer, 1/10 through TV. This is interesting. Just one of you yesterday says, I put you on TV, I watch you all the time. That's interesting. Tablet, 5%. So yeah, this is one. Okay, the income will live it in another way. The income is not, I mean, it's almost symbolic. It's not too bad. What the hell is what people search based that I could do? Regional organization, European Union. People are fixating. Basically, well, it's not like there isn't something to it, but they sort of start reasoning as if Europe was an entire country. We're quite not there yet. So it's not much a European Union organization. There's so much more that has to be sort of fixed or work. Napoleonic battle report. Why do they know of Europe? What the, in the past, this is so random. I don't know. In the past, there were sort of more straightforward topics that told me, look, why don't you make a video about this? Very, very strange. And YouTube tends to create its own rabbit holes by, for example, say, look at, AI instruments for inspiring new titles or topics. Here I get Frankish spirit when Rome faded in the West, esoteric historical turning points 19 and Indo-European spirit. What the heck, it's weird. It's tailored apparently also in my own kind of called 30 years work, crossable of ethno-national identity, medieval Italy, Calabrian campaign, and unexplored histories. Yeah, I want to make something of that kind. Actually, still have to prepare, but I had already scheduled. I don't need this. The pawn scenarios. This is tailored surely by AI through the basis of a question was asked on the channel recently. So YouTube uses AI weirdly, as we can see. But in any case, like, there is surely a lot of stuff that can be explored, and that's what where we have gotten as a channel, right? We are a bit more enthusiastically sort of connected with the sort of broader picture and interest of content. Again, this thumbnail, I see Corleone is not doing bad as a video, because it's gone for 25 minutes out there in the world, and we happy if you have this privilege of seeing it. So we need other 155 subscribers and we get to the 30,000 milestone. At that point, I think that, if anything, just from a psychological point of view, people say, oh, it's a 20,000 channel. Like, 30,000 changes everything. And I'm sure that more people are going to subscribe at that point only because they see 30,000 as opposed to 20,000. That's my prognostic. For the rest, nothing too bad. Subscribers have kept rising a little bit compared to early this year. That seemingly, as you've seen also in the past channel updates, seemed like, we had exhausted the subscribers, like we had saturated the public reach and so on. Instead, Doesn't seem like it, but the channel gradually builds up and obtains this plateau that is really ever sounder, ever sort of more compact, ever more layered. And I see that you participate to that. So I'm really glad to see that. And let's extend this. Let's make this channel reach unprecedented places, and let's make things like people really want. I don't see any other major update in this 30 days. We're continuing with also certain mini-series. I can't spoiler something what I'm preparing, but I don't usually do it. I can just maybe look at some little things. I will say the most generic stuff that so the people don't steal. They can't steal it anyway as soon as I make the video. Of course, the idea is about that. But I have something, for example, on the Balkan Wars. I have something on kings of France and French kings as a whole, which doesn't mean sometimes French kings on other people's thrones. We have something more about the Sasanians that we really never talked too much about. And it's not like, to me, like the Sasanians were always there, but for some reason we didn't cover them. We have to finish the thing on medieval India, on medieval Far East Asia as well, as far as the regional warfare series, and that we will end a particularly important moment in the channel. We have to finish the Roman conquest of Spain. I have something really unique. Also, I'm covering again Vietnam because the series never ended, and we're still at the beginning. We'll talk again more about von Clausewitz, hopefully soon. So again, we have lots of interesting things in store, and this is just from the specials, by the way. There are lots of very unique and beautiful topics, actually. Some are classics, others are new, but you will see and you will likely appreciate. Right. I created new playlists, by the way. I don't know if you know it, but basically you can create infinite playlists. As you can technically, I think, upload all the YouTube videos you want, really. There isn't sort of a roof, like you can do whatever you want. Unless, well, yes, there's a way to recognize spam, like if there's trash, to think about AI slop, but seemingly YouTube is fixing that, because especially last summer, this year, we saw lots of that, and apparently I don't see much of that anymore, so that's very appreciated. And I see, again, pretty good niches we are exploring. At this point, I see also other channels have gotten a bit speedier in videos making for some reason. At least those with a theme behind are really big with millions of subscribers. They have become speedier, unless it's a one guy operation only, or at least one guy who controls everything. And so if you look at Kings and Generals, they make a video almost every day. So they probably realize, and I wouldn't like to say something, but I think they took inspiration from a video of two of mine. It would be completely normal given that they cover everything at the same speed, so it would be nothing strange. But it happened to some extent in the past to see on other channels, to some other, some stuff that on Schwerpunkt we're relatively unique. And I see it at this point, again, as we're managing to cover unprecedented niches that we've never discussed. For example, the video I made yesterday on Corleone. Not bad. We never really talked about him. We really haven't made so many videos about the condottieri to begin with, so it seems to me like it's a pretty good moment and phase, like to, again, fill those gaps, talking more about specific kings, being a bit more sort of coherent. Again, we must continue, in any case, the cycle, because without that, we can't reach where we want to be more closely, more directly. Right? We have to continue the encyclopedic cut, because without that, we can't properly move. We can't properly go on. It's always going to remain incomplete. We're just doing at that point, like other channels, to just make the thing that people think they may want to like. We needed, again, more biographies, more campaigns, so that's exactly what the vacuum that we're gapping there. This will help the channel a lot also in terms of views, so that at some point, even some of the, for example, the other day I made that video about ancient warships, construction, design, and operational methods across different maritime traditions. And not many people watched it. Last day I made it, only 300 views. What can I say? I'm going to change the title because I actually don't like those different traditions. Between Northern Europe and Mediterranean, but I think it's Europe across Europe and the Mediterranean. Oh no, it's not. It doesn't fit. Across, we didn't delete different, so that's why it's perfect. Across Europe and the Mediterranean. You see, that's handled, that the title helps with the clicks, with the searches and so on. You have to look at this BS, but it helps. It helps organizing your speech, your mind, and it's useful. It's useful in general. I don't plan I plan many other new series. For example, that's the other paradox that happens when you have all these videos, that it's become difficult not to find topics. That was never difficult. It's become difficult to choose them. Why one or the other? You have to think of how much you've done and why that video would do better or worse. And sometimes you reason in terms of weeks or months, and then you find yourself wanting to make a particular video you always wanted to make after a year or so. For example, we had to make Alexander this year. We still haven't, for some reason. I have to do that. Some people tell me, but I want you to make a video about Yugoslavia, and then I want then we must do more von Clausewitz, and then you have just so many days, right? With a daily video, there's just so much you can do. When I went on vacations this year, as you know, I left you lots of videos too, and I was basically able to make a couple of videos a day, also because fortunately I had some extra time, and some were just more like condensated, so not lists of information, were even better crafted videos than usual because the script was easier to make in that sense, but it's more like a story, like those 10 Catholic monasteries, or the 10 Italian victories of World War II. You remember that week, right? Some videos were sort of more prepared for that day or another, but others were actually more ad hoc. And so in theory, I could even make 2 videos a day, but of course it's prohibitive. I have to work, and I don't have time. But I can still, since I always work, and this is the advantage of always working, you can always create a niche of time and nothing happens really. You know how to make up for these holes in the schedule. You can go on vacations. That's also a very interesting thing here, is that everything can work on autopilot to a degree. But you also need to work, you need to be consistent. That's mostly what it all revolves around. It's not some kind of strange, I'm not very strategic in this, because I've always said, okay, I have to do this for fun, right? But over time, you start reflecting on what you have to talk about, because it's important to choose the topic, for that topic to be what it is. And so at that level, in many ways, it's mostly about how you really see this in perspective, like what are people going to think really about this whole? Are they going to appreciate? Are they going to like it or not? It's difficult. It's not that easy as it seems. You automatically start thinking in more strategic terms, because you know that a video or another can really make the difference. At this point, also for the views, for maintaining a steady flow, that in turn fidelizes people. The algorithm must be chased to a degree. It's all very tricky. It's not addictive, really. I could stop tomorrow. The point is that, in fact, I have a broader purpose. Most people actually stop. And the actual trick on YouTube to be successful on YouTube, that you maybe kind of advice you shouldn't take from a guy that made a video every day for several years, still below 30,000 subscribers, is that, it's really how consistent you are, how many videos you make over and over, and not the same ones, but I mean how much of a reputation you build. Because at the end of the day, that's more powerful than any algorithm, right? This channel has made history in a sense. I can't start claiming some place in YouTube for that, and people are aware that I'm there. They are sometimes even, again, probably a bit scared about what I'm doing. Not that I'm going to take over YouTube or anything, but let's say I'm scared of if anything, of some standard I set in different ways, and in even non-obvious ones, right? I'm not bragging about the fact of historical quality and so on. And that's a thing, and I argue it's important. But I'm talking about, again, this being this consistent, which I can tell you, probably ask yourself, but how do you do it? I answered you in some serene videos, and of course things change, and there is a deeper motivation. That's maybe the thing that you would like to hear the most, but in general, it's also there. Like, that's the point I've made multiple times. Schwerpunkt history, if you listen to what I'm doing every day, you understand why I do it, even without me explicitly telling you that, right? So it's a long journey. It's tricky, it's complicated, it's somehow less obvious, obviously, than it is, because you don't do this just for fun, simply for fun. It's part of my work, but it's primarily part of the way I search in my life. That's maybe why I'm a historian, among the other things. Yeah, but it's also a matter of specific goals, right? Part of my rising is connected with this. I'm a very tendentially, I do tend towards a competitor, even though my nature in general is not maybe so obviously heading towards that direction. I aim, right? I shoot at targets, and there arrives a point at which you have so many targets at a time, which is different from merely knowing how to shoot well. It becomes something else entirely, and so that's and it's, again, not obvious what I'm suggesting here, but I'm sure at some point it can become. And yeah, this is more or less the point. I here am downloading other autumn pictures that probably you're going to be fed up at some point with, and sort of lots of stuff. Well, but anyway, so many pictures you will see here. That's how it is, and believe me, that's another thing that some of you wonder about me, whether, say, what kind of experience brought me to do, not much the channel, but getting into what I'm getting on a regular basis. That would deserve so much more reflection and approach, let's say, to different aspects, but not just what I just said about just listen to what I'm saying carefully, and you will understand. There is some sort of how to say this, background, of course, that is the part of, say, my life that I don't talk to you about, and the answer is actually that I have a much more average not necessarily boring, but average kind of background, and it's as you know, I've had I think my life was interesting to me. And I'm not asking for other people to think the same, but I mean, some people like to make assumptions on, even friendly, positive ones, about my background, because they had sort of to justify or maybe just to explain especially explain my content, why I do what I do. And the answers are much more mysterious in the sense that given a fairly normal background, it's not so obvious that I would even end up doing what I do. And so there is something sort of more personal. I mean, not plot twists or, drama, trauma, none of that either. That's why I said that a normal life at large. But also very specific paths that I took and specific reasons why I do what I do that in that sense are both more difficult to explain, but also probably more interesting than they seem. It's a strange part of my life too, because again, I sort of succeed the most in the things I like, but at the same time, things say in the things that other people would think, oh my god, it's such a big deal, right? But to me, they aren't. In fact, the thing that probably would surprise you the most is to say that to me, this is just a way to not to kill the time, because I don't think like I have time to waste or to cover just with things that do not deserve the same. But my motivations are beyond all this, right? I don't know how I've gotten myself to some point. I mean, I know every step of the way, but in the sense I couldn't tell to you. Well, basically I've gotten here because simply I know why I had to get here. That's also yet another thing entirely, and I like challenges. Let's put it in this way. It's not even like I'm particularly competitive with others. I'm competitive with myself. I find it way more interesting. And I like to compete with others because at that point when you compete with others, this happened many times in my life, making myself too many, not problems, but let's say using your measure of unit of measure and finding out that it suddenly actually this was not valid for her. You pose yourself problems that other people really neither even think of at any point, and all realizing that you sort of surclass them in the process. That's at least in particular fields and what eventually characterizes you. There are lots of younger people who write me saying, but typically this has always been the case, also because that's exactly the age when you do this, in your early 20s. And that story is interesting. So if you're interested in that stuff, if you go in the Terrain playlist, you will find pretty interesting things yourself. Probably you will find myself at an age in which sort of you find myself a bit more relatable for yours, even though, I started pretty late this, and I was young, of course, but let's say I got to through paths that normally, in fact, or most people don't take, or they would find unbearable to an extent. And so, yeah, that's pretty much it. Very well, I see this is the right time. I'm still pouring pictures here of autumn. But it's weird because as you're seeing the video, I'm actually you see all the pictures crossing. I'm literally downloading them in the moment in which I'm recording, so it's as if I were throwing them at you right now. You see he can hear all the clicks, etc. And here there is just too much about autumn. I have to cut it at some point, otherwise it will take forever. And so let's also put an end to this here. So for today, I just hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, please share it. Otherwise, leave a like or subscribe to my channel if you're interested in my upcoming content. As always, I thank you heartily for listening to me. I wish you a nice time and see you next time. Bye.